Hello everyone, today we're going to be talking about gerrymandering. Now I know this is a hot button issue just because California passed Prop 50 and Texas drew up 5 Democratic seats, and we're seeing an overall scramble to see more states gerrymander ahead of the midterms. But today I wanted to look at purely which states already have good maps versus which states have terrible maps, and I have a grading scale from A all the way to F. And for those of you who don't know, I am a political analyst. I've worked on multiple different campaigns throughout multiple different states over the last several years, and including the presidential race here in Wisconsin. And with that being said, if you guys do end up enjoying this video, remember to leave a like on the video and hit that red subscribe button and to smash that notification bell down below to stay up to date with everything going on the channel. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with our gerrymandering map grading. Now, the first thing I want to do before we actually start grading states on this map is to remove all the states that only have one congressional district. Now, for those of you who don't know, there are a number of states like, for example, Vermont or Delaware that only have one congressional district because they only have one representative, and that is the absolute minimum each state can have. So there are several states that only have one representative, and like I mentioned before, we have Vermont, we have Delaware, we have both Dakotas, we have Wyoming, and we have Alaska, all of which only have one representative, and that removes 6 states right away from the map. Now that we filled in all of the states that only have one congressional district, therefore we cannot grade them for this video, I want to move on to showing you guys a couple of states that already have good maps. And I want to start off with Michigan. Now, Michigan, in my opinion, has one of the best maps. So right away, they have a delegation of 13, 7 are currently Republican, 6 are currently Democratic. And when you look at the results of the 2024 election, I mean, Michigan did go to the GOP, and so when I look at this here, I think that that's definitely fair. So you don't have a lopsided coalition going to DC, regardless of the party who won based off of percentage. And when I look at this map here, I think that this is fair. You have 4 safe Democratic seats around Detroit. You have 3 rural, GOP seats that are safe. You have, 2, more definitely GOP leaning seats, and then you have 2 Democratic seats that are leaning and 1 competitive district. I think this is definitely a fair map, and I would give Michigan an A for this map. There's nothing crazy, no crazy gerrymandered lines, and we'll look at some states that have crazy lines so you guys have an idea of what I'm looking at when I say that. But right away, I'm just going to give Michigan an A. Michigan checks all the right boxes. And then moving down to Indiana. Now, Indiana does, in my mind, have a decent map. Indiana has 2 Democratic districts, and there's red states out there that only have 1 when they should have at least 2. Indiana doesn't have that problem, and they have a delegation of 9 representatives they send to DC, and 2 of them are Democrat, and I like that. What I don't like about Indiana's map, however, is the fact that there's no competitive districts in the state. What I mean by that is the Democrat districts are, solid for the Democrats, and I think these 2 should be solid Democrat, but there's not one more district that's leaning. It could be a Republican leaning district, and this map would be almost perfect, but because there's not that, I would say while the state is better than most, I don't think it's as good as Michigan. So it gets a B. Now, moving over to Ohio. Ohio, it sends a delegation of 15 representatives to DC, 10 of which are Republican, 5 of which are Democratic. Now, my problem with Ohio is the fact that it has 10 safe Republican seats, 2 safe Democrat seats, 1 leaning district, 1 likely, and 1 competitive. And when you put the numbers to the chart here, you see what the problem is. And Democrats currently have 5, and what you see is that Democrats get only 33% of the House seats when they won, and we'll look at it right here, they won 43% of the vote. So they're getting cheated out of 10% or 10 points of representation, which on the map right here would probably be 1 more House seat. So this map, it's not great. It could be a lot better. And because of that, Ohio is going to get a grade of C. Now, moving down to Kentucky. Now, Kentucky has 6 representatives that they send to DC. And when I look at the in terms of the voter split with how the state went in the last election, I mean, Republicans got 65% of the vote. In the state, Democrats got 34%. But my main issue with Kentucky's map is they have deliberately split Lexington up between several districts. And I don't like it when states do that. And to give you guys an idea of what I'm talking about, here's Louisville and here's Lexington. It is obvious to me what the GOP in Kentucky did. And I don't think that this is right. And I think that there should be, at the minimum, one more competitive district in Kentucky. And because of that, I would say Kentucky, the map definitely could be better. It's not an absolute failure of a map, but it's pretty close to it. Now, moving over to Illinois, the state of Illinois gets an F. And I'm just going to say that blatantly right now. These two districts, I mean, look at the lines they drew for these two districts. This is a map that, in my mind, should have absolutely been struck down by the Supreme Court, similar to Alabama and Louisiana's maps. This is a map that is so unfair that I cannot believe that the state didn't get sued for this map. But let's just look at all the problems with it. Starting off with these two districts, I mean, come on. These two districts, you could see how they spliced in parts of Chicago with these very rural and somewhat suburban districts. And just look at a heat map of the precincts of Illinois. I mean, we're looking at this mostly rural area being purposely lumped in with Chicago in such a way that the district would be impossible for the Republicans to win. Either of those districts would be impossible to win. I mean, what is that? And then you look at some of these other lines. I mean, the Democrats drew their lines in such a way that these districts would be impossible for the GOP to ever win. And I don't like that. It's not fair. And they weren't even subtle about it. They were obvious about this. And then you look at the numbers the GOP got out of Illinois this last cycle. I mean, Republicans got 43% of the vote. And Republicans have 17.5% of the House seats in Illinois. Bruh. This map is horrible. This is, in my mind, Illinois is probably one of the most gerrymandered states in the country. Illinois gets an F. Now, moving on over to Iowa, the state of Iowa's map, it's not all that horrible. My main problem I have with Iowa is the fact that there isn't one Democratic seat. Now, I do give the GOP credit here. There are two seats that are competitive, but because Iowa doesn't have a single Democratic district, I got to say that Iowa's map could be better. It's not as bad as Illinois. It's pretty hard to be worse than Illinois. Illinois's got one of the worst maps, but I would say Iowa's map, it could be a little bit better. And I'm going to give Iowa a C. Now, moving down to Missouri, the state of Missouri does have a pretty solid map. Now, we have a delegation of 8 that goes to D.C., 2 of which are Democrat, and the rest are solid Republican minus this district here. Now, again, my main gripe with Missouri is the fact that this district here, the 2nd district, isn't more competitive. I think a delegation of, potentially, I'm fine with a delegation of 6 Republicans from Missouri. Missouri is a deep red state. That doesn't bother me whatsoever. I mean, Trump won the state by 18.5 points. The GOP almost got 60% of the vote out of Missouri. So for me, that map isn't terrible in Missouri, but my main complaint is there isn't a more competitive district that both sides really got to fight for in the state. And you'll see that that's kind of a common theme with a lot of these states on both sides of the aisle. And so with Missouri, I would say it's probably better than most. I would say it's definitely better than most. It's definitely better than Kentucky, better than Ohio or Iowa, but probably not as good as Michigan. And it's up there with Indiana. So I'm going to go ahead and give Missouri a B. Now, moving over to West Virginia. Now, West Virginia, this is an interesting one. So West Virginia has 2 solidly Republican districts. Now, I know there are people who claim West Virginia is gerrymandered, but, I mean, just looking at this county map here, I mean, Republicans won every single county, and, Republicans got 70% of the vote out of the state. No matter which way you draw these districts, Republicans are going to win every election in, West Virginia. And so I would say West Virginia gets an A. They have a good map. And so moving up over to Pennsylvania, and then we're going to move up into New England. So with Pennsylvania's map is relatively fair. I like the fact that they have multiple districts that could swing back and forth. I think that this is a good map. This is pretty representatory of how the state has gone in the last several elections. Looking back at 2022, the Democrats won the Senate seat here, and for them to have a majority, it makes sense. In 2024, Republicans did very well. They won the Senate race in Pennsylvania. President Trump won it by several points. To me, this is what a good map looks like. I would say Pennsylvania's map's pretty good. I'm going to give Pennsylvania an A as well. Pennsylvania gets an A. Now, moving over to New York. Now, the state of New York's map, in my mind, isn't very good. And the reason why is when you have a state where in 2020, Biden got 23 points. He did very well. Democrats did very well in the state in 2020. And then you go to 2024 and Republicans slash that margin in half. And you go from 2022 to 2024 and Democrats flip 4 seats. But what I noticed is the Democrats in 2022, the lines were different than they are now. They altered the congressional lines in the state to favor Democrats. And all you got to do is look at the heat map here. It looks like that they put parts of Albany and some of these other more liberal areas. They lumped a bunch of more liberal areas into more competitive districts to give themselves an edge, so that they could edge out the Republicans of 4 seats. And this is one of the states that you can definitely tell the lines are not fair in. With New York, it's pretty obvious to me. And then when you go to the chart here, Democrats have 19 seats, Republicans have 7. So when you enter in 19 for the Democrats, you enter in 7 for the GOP. And the Republicans definitely got screwed in New York. I mean, they're getting about a quarter of the House seats, and when you look at the raw vote, I mean, they should have gotten much more than that. They should have gotten twice that. So, I mean, in my mind, the Republicans should have had at least 3 or 4 more seats in New York. This is definitely not a great map. It could definitely be better. Now, moving over to Connecticut. Connecticut's map is, and this is a state where there isn't a single GOP seat in Connecticut. And when I look at this map, it's pretty obvious to me what the Democrats did. You have this red strip here that is very conservative. And then you have the western part of the state, which is more liberal. It's closer to New York City. And what the Democrats did was they split Connecticut 1 and Connecticut 5. They split the conservative vote really between these 2 districts to make it less competitive. And I don't think that's a good thing. And, I mean, the way the lines are drawn, you can see that there is Republican counties in the state. There's 2 of them. And to me, it's obvious that the state lines aren't very fair. I mean, you look at the western part of the eastern part of the state near Rhode Island. I mean, this could be a district of its own. Republicans could definitely have 1 district in the state. And because of that, similar to Kentucky, I dinged Republicans for this in Kentucky. I'm going to ding the Democrats for a terrible map over in the state of Connecticut. Now, moving over to Rhode Island, once again, Rhode Island does not have a single Republican seat. Now, I know it only has 2 districts, and my main issue is when you look at the heat map, you can see that the whole western half of the state is very Republican, and it's Providence that keeps the state blue. Now, when you look at this map, you can see they were sneaky and they split Providence between the 2 districts to make it impossible for Republicans to win in either district. So because they did that, I'm going to ding them for that. It could definitely be a better map. Is it as bad as Connecticut, a state with a much higher population, or New York? No, but it's not a fair map. And then moving up to Massachusetts. The state of Massachusetts sends a delegation of 9 to D.C., and as you can see, they don't have a single Republican district. Now, in the defense of Massachusetts, the state is one of the bluest states in the country. Republicans only got 36% of the vote. And when you look at the geography of the state, this is a state where not a single county voted Republican. And, I mean, to me, it's not likely that you could draw a Republican district out of this without having to draw, you would have to gerrymander a district out of this for the Republicans for them to have a district. So they should have a Republican district, but at the same time, I can't ding them too hard for that. I mean, I'd say the map could be a little bit better. And because of that, I would say Massachusetts gets a C. Now, moving up to New Hampshire. New Hampshire's map, my main issue is, again, they don't have a Republican district. And unlike Massachusetts or Rhode Island, New Hampshire was a very close state. I mean, this was almost a 50-50 state. And this map does not reflect that. I mean, there should be at least either one very competitive district or one Republican district that is somewhat competitive. And this map is not representative representative at all, and I don't like it, and I'm going to ding them. This is definitely a map that definitely could be a lot better. Now, moving up to Maine, Maine's lines are actually pretty good. For those of you who don't know, this is a district that Trump carried by about 10 points. And this is actually a fair map. Maine actually does already have a good map. When I look at this here, you have the very suburban, urban, first district. The second district is very rural. It's just Democrats have run a very good candidate up here. And ticket splitting in Maine is actually a big thing. So I'm going to say that Democrats get a pass on Maine just because I know that map and I know it's a good map. And so I will say that it is definitely better than most. Could the lines be adjusted a little bit? Perhaps. But other than that, I think Maine has a good map. Now, going down over to New Jersey, New Jersey gets an F on this map. This is a terrible map for several reasons. Number one, let's look at the voting in the state. I mean, Republicans got 45% of the vote, yet they only have 25% of the House seats. So, and Republicans, yeah, they're getting screwed in this map, with this map here. They should have at least 2, possibly 3 more seats. I would say 2 would be fair. At least some of these seats could be a little more competitive. I mean, some of these should be a little bit more competitive. I mean, you could argue that this one is somewhat competitive, but I mean, come on. I mean, this map isn't fair. This map needs to have at least 1 or 2 more Republican seats. And because of that, and it's obvious to me that the way they drew these lines, they drew them to be unfair to the GOP. New Jersey absolutely gets an F on this map. New Jersey has a terrible map. Now, moving down to the state of Maryland. Maryland is another state that, in my mind, it's pretty obvious that they drew this map to be really unfair. When you look at the western part of the state, Western Maryland is very conservative. I mean, you can see here what the Democrats did. I mean, this whole district should be conservative, but they purposely lumped in a Democratic area in the state, that part of the state. I think Frederick is what they lumped in. Yeah, they lumped in Frederick here on this map, and that makes it pretty much unwinnable for the GOP. And because Maryland sends a delegation of 8 to D.C., and because the GOP got over 34% of the vote in Maryland, and they only have 1 seat, I'd say, yeah, this would definitely be fair. Giving them 2 seats would be fair, and because of that, again, this is a blatant gerrymander. Maryland's going to get an F. Now, moving on over to Virginia. I think the lines in Virginia are relatively fair. I mean, you have 4 safe GOP seats to 4 safe Democratic seats. But my main gripe with this map is, I mean, you could say that it's a little unfair, the fact that this 7th district is as competitive as it is. I mean, this map isn't terrible. I would say the lines on this map are relatively good, and I wouldn't mess with this map too much. I mean, the lines could be adjusted a little bit more to make things a little bit more competitive, but I mean, this is a blue-leaning state, and so I would say Virginia gets a B. This is a pretty good map. Now, moving on to the state of North Carolina. North Carolina gets an F for several reasons. I mean, you can see what they did up here with Greensboro. The city of Greensboro is split multiple different ways. You can see a heat map here of the state of North Carolina, and you can see you have Fayetteville down here, for example. There is no House seat for Fayetteville. Fayetteville's split between 2 different districts that are very conservative, and you can see what they've done here. I mean, this is not a fair map, and you can see the Raleigh-Durham area has been heavily gerrymandered to favor the GOP. I mean, this is not a fair map whatsoever, and this is a Republican map that is incredibly unfair. And to give you guys an idea of just how unfair this map is, so you got 10 seats for the GOP, and I mean, gosh, this is definitely not a proportional map. I mean, the Democrats have 28.6% of the House seat representation. Republicans have 71%. And Republicans got 50% of the vote. I mean, Democrats are getting screwed in North Carolina. And because of that, Republicans get an F in North Carolina. This is a terrible map. And moving down to South Carolina. Now, South Carolina, it's not as bad as North Carolina. I mean, this is a pretty deep red state. My main gripe with South Carolina is the fact that it doesn't have a second competitive district. To me, it's obvious that they have gerrymandered the map. They put Columbia and Charleston kind of into one one district here, and I don't think that's right. That they clumped everybody who's kind of the same mindset into one district, and then just split everything else up to make it pretty much impossible for the Democrats to win a second district here in South Carolina. And because of that, South Carolina, it's not as bad as North Carolina. And if you notice, I'm pretty reserved with what I fail in terms of a bad map. But South Carolina's got a pretty bad map. Now, moving down to Georgia. Now, the state of Georgia, in my opinion, does not have a numerically fair map. So starting off, to give you guys an idea, the state was about 50-50. And the state is definitely gerrymandered. I mean, Democrats, they're definitely getting cheated on this map. So what you end up having is a bunch of very uncompetitive rural Republican districts, rural-dominated districts. And then over here in the north, I mean, you could argue that one more district should be, either very competitive or Democratic in Atlanta. When you look at a map of Atlanta, I mean, gosh, it's a very blue area of the country, and Democrats have made a lot of gains here. So I'm going to say that Georgia gets an F as well. This is not a fair map. Now, moving down to Florida, the state of Florida, contrary to Georgia, the state of Florida has done a complete opposite of Georgia. Now, when you look at the numbers in Florida, I mean, you can definitely see that Jacksonville, they cracked Jacksonville here in the northern part of the state. And then Miami, it's hard to say because Miami-Dade County, when you look at the county map of Florida, I mean, Miami-Dade County did vote for the GOP. I mean, Republicans did very well in the state as a whole. So, I mean, when you look at a heat map of Florida, I mean, you could argue that there could be a panhandle district. Jacksonville's definitely split. And when you look at it, yeah, I mean, this is not it's definitely not a fair map at all. When you put the numbers to it, I don't think it's fair. When you look at how much of the vote, the Republicans got about 60% of the vote. Democrats got a little over 42. So, I mean, you look at this map here, yeah, Democrats are definitely getting cheated out of a couple of seats. And even if there weren't a few, there definitely should be, when you look at Florida, there definitely should be a couple of more competitive seats in the red area. Democrats could definitely have a competitive district around Tallahassee and up in where Jacksonville is. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and give Florida a grade of a D. The map definitely could be better. It's not fair at all. And I'm giving it a D mostly because, to be fair, I gave New York a D as well. Both states really could have better maps. Now, moving on over to the state of Alabama. Now, Alabama is one of two states that was forced to redistrict just because the maps were not very fair. And when you look at Alabama, I mean, this state is a deep red state. Look at Alabama. I mean, Republicans won 65% of the vote in Alabama, and Democrats already have 2 seats in Alabama. So, I mean, that to me is an automatic win, in my opinion, in terms of the fairness of this map. Now, the second district, I mean, it is, and I hate to say it, put it like this, but this is what the Republicans would call a DEI gerrymander, where they drew a minority district. They went out of their way to draw a district just to be minority based. And so I'm not a big fan of drawing districts like that, but at the same time, I think it is a good thing that Alabama has a more fair map, obviously more fair than some of its neighbors. So Alabama's map, I'm going to give it an A. Now, I'm going to say with Mississippi, its next door neighbor, this is a pretty cut and dry situation here. Now, Mississippi, I mean, it's a deep red state, first of all, and Republicans got 60% of the vote. And if you gave a second district to the Democrats, it would be a 50-50 state. And I think that this map overall, it's relatively fair. There's not too much to cover here. I'm going to say that, again, maybe the lines could be a little bit better, so I'll give it a B. Now, moving up to Tennessee, looking at Tennessee's map, first thing that jumps out at me is Davidson County, this is where Nashville is split multiple different ways. To give you guys an idea, so Tennessee's a deep red state, but I mean I'm not a big fan of splitting up a city like that. I mean, that's an obvious gerrymander in Tennessee, and I was pretty hard on Maryland for something similar. So, I mean, Tennessee's map is very unfair in my opinion. And when you look at this here, I mean, Democrats have 1 out of 9 seats. So, yeah, I mean, that right there is enough for me to give Tennessee an F. And moving down to Louisiana. Now, Louisiana, let me pull up the map right here. it has another one of these, and I'm going to use the term again, DEI districts. And this one really actually is a gerrymander in favor of the Democrats. Now, I don't like that I don't mind there being a second district in Louisiana that's, that leans Democratic. Don't get me wrong. I don't have a problem with that. But when you look at the fact of the state, I mean, Republicans once again won 60% of the vote in the state. And when you have to draw a map like this to give the Democrats a second district, I don't think that this is right. I don't think districts like this are right. And this is a minority majority district similar to the second congressional district in Alabama. So because of that, I don't think Louisiana's map is as good as Alabama's. And I'm going to go ahead and give it, it's better than most, but it could be better. Now, moving north to Arkansas, the state of Arkansas, I mean, this map is terrible. They, again, similar to Tennessee, they split Little Rock 3 different ways. You look over at Arkansas, and I'm just going to say this right now. Little Rock's a very blue city, and you can see they split Little Rock up 3 different ways. There should be at least one Democratic district in the state. There is not one, and because of that, Arkansas is going to get an F. I don't like it when they do stuff like that. It's very much not right. Now, moving up to my home state of Wisconsin. Now, I know this is a state that gets a lot of crap for its map. You have 6 Republicans and 2 Democrats. Now, this is an interesting state. And the reason I say that is, it is proportional in terms of the geographic region. So, for example, with Milwaukee has its own district, Madison has its own district, and then you have the Republican areas, the North Woods have its own district, the Fox Valley, which is its own distinctive region, which has, Green Bay, Appleton, that's Outagamie County, Brown County. This is its own distinctive region, and to me, having it have its own congressional district makes sense. And then when you look at these other 2 districts, I mean, these 2 districts, in my mind, their lines are pretty fair because, I mean, these are the WOW counties here. And I don't mind these lines here. And then the problem I have, I guess, and a lot of other people do as well, is the fact that these other 2 districts lean Republican. And I can tell you guys why that's the case. So let's start with the 1st Congressional District. Now, the 1st Congressional District includes part of Milwaukee County. It includes Racine and Kenosha, and it includes all of Walworth and part of Rock County. Now, the problem is, if you go back to 2012, Democrats, specifically Barack Obama, did very well in this area. So for this to be its own congressional district, it made sense. Now in 2024, what we saw is this area went solidly for the GOP. And I will admit, the Republicans have a pretty strong candidate in the 1st district in Brian Stile. I mean, he's a pretty strong incumbent in that district. And I think that, that's the story here. It's just bad geography for this district. Now, moving over to this district here, the 3rd Congressional District, this district here actually has been redrawn several times to be more favorable to the Democrats, without including parts of, suburban Madison, which has nothing in common with the rest of this district. But to give you guys a little idea about Wisconsin's 3rd District, you have Portage, La Crosse, and Eau Claire counties, the 3 most populated counties in the 3rd District. All are Democratic, and this is where Portage is, to give you an idea. So this little extension here, this little arm here, it actually is, in my opinion, a gerrymander to give the Democrats a competitive edge in a region of the state where, once again, if you go back to 2012, they used to dominate southwest Wisconsin. They used to do well along the Minnesota border, and now they do not. So, yes, I don't think that this map numerically is fair for Democrats, but this is a map where, even though it's a competitive state, Democrats have atrocious geography. Like, Democrats have lost so much support in both the southeast and southwest parts of the state that they're not as competitive as they used to be. And yes, perhaps this map needs to be changed some, but I wouldn't say this map is necessarily a complete and total failure, because it does protect the regional continuity of the state. Similar to Massachusetts, where Republicans just have horrible geography, I say the same for Democrats. Therefore, the map could definitely be better, but it's not as bad as a state like North Carolina, where the lines are deliberately drawn to be existentially horrible. And going over to Minnesota, Minnesota has a map where it is split right down the middle. You have 4 very safe Republican seats, 4 safe, very Democrat seats. As much as I like a state that tries to go right down the middle, Minnesota is a blue state, and I believe that at least one of these Republican districts needs to be more competitive. So the map could definitely be better, and it's definitely, in my mind, it's it's a bit unfair to the Democrats. So because of that, Minnesota, it gets a B, but it could definitely be better. Now, moving over to Nebraska. Now, this is a state. Nebraska doesn't have a single Democratic representative, which normally I would ding the Democrats for, except for the second congressional district actually voted at the presidential level for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. As you can see here, it voted for Biden and it voted for Harris. And the Republicans just have a really strong recruit in the second district, similar to Maine, where you have a strong Democratic recruit in a very conservative part of the state. Democrats or Republicans have a strong recruit in Nebraska's second congressional district. And when you actually look at the numbers from Nebraska, I mean, this is a pretty Republican state. I mean, Republicans won 60% of the vote. So this map is, in my mind, it is pretty fair. And I would give this map a B. Now, moving down to Kansas, Kansas sends a delegation of 4 to D.C. And again, it's similar to Mississippi, where this is a red state. I mean, if you gave the Democrats a second district, it would be a 50-50 state, which would be unfair in my mind to the GOP. However, I think the compromise here is making a second, more competitive district and not having a 3-to-1 ratio where three of these districts are just straight up safe for the GOP. So I think Kansas's map, it's good. It could be better. And that's where I'm going to give it. I'm going to say it gets a C. Now, moving down to Oklahoma, this is another state that gets dinged all the time for being gerrymandered. And you can see that Oklahoma City is split across 3 districts, and I'm not a fan of that. Now, when you look at Oklahoma on the county level, every single county in the state voted for President Trump. The GOP did very well in Oklahoma. This is a state where Republicans are closing in on 70% of the vote in the state. And so when you look at a heat map of Oklahoma, you can see Oklahoma City is blue. You can see that, Norman is somewhat blue. And you could argue that the Democrats should have a district carved out of both areas just for them. But I'm also not a fan of gerrymandering a district just for an opposition party. So what I think should happen with Oklahoma is they should draw the lines to where there is a more competitive district. But again, every county did vote for the Republicans last time around. So I think that that's kind of the compromise. So what I will say is Oklahoma's map, it's better than most, but it could be better. So I'm going to give them a C. I'm going to give Republicans a C in this map. Now going down to Texas, the infamous state that Republicans have gerrymandered. This is obviously a gerrymandered map. Even before they drew out 5 more Democrat seats. I mean, you look at Dallas-Fort Worth. I mean, this is like Illinois inversed almost with the crazy gerrymandering. Like, you have this district here. Like, what is this? I mean, come on, guys. This district's not fair. And when you look at the math for Texas, you have 13 Democrats. Democrats are definitely getting screwed on the math to an extent. Republicans got 56% of the vote. Democrats got 42% of the vote. And so when you look here, I mean, they're getting 34% of the House seats. So it's not, I mean, the lines are horrible, but I mean, numerically speaking, the map isn't as bad as it looks, but it's still not great. And when I look at it that way, I mean, Texas borders on failing. I'm going to give them a D for now, but I mean, this map, I mean, the way they drew the lines really is unacceptable in my mind. But at the same time, numbers-wise, it's not as unfair as it could be, or as unfair as it will be with the lines they're getting now. Now, moving over to the state of New Mexico. Now, New Mexico, this is a state that is really, really unfair. It is a blue-leaning state, but it's not that uncompetitive. I mean, Harris only got 51% of the vote. I mean, Republicans got 45% of the vote. They have close to half of the vote in the state, and they don't have a single seat. Albuquerque split 3 ways. To me, that's an automatic F for the state. I mean, New Mexico gets an F. Now, moving up to Colorado. Colorado is another 50-50 state. Now, unlike Minnesota, which we graded a second ago, where the seats are, it's 4 safe Republicans, 4 safe Democrats, Colorado has three very competitive districts. You have one that Republicans just picked up in the last election cycle, one that's somewhat competitive, one that's a little more safe, and then one that's safe, while the Democrats have 4 safe districts. So I would say Colorado's map's pretty good. I would say the lines might need to be tweaked a little bit to be a little bit more, fair in terms of the way the state votes. But overall, I would say Colorado gets a B. Now, moving up to Montana, the state of Montana only has two districts, and I actually only recently got a new district in the last, couple of elections. It used to be a state where we could not grade because the state only had one district, but now Montana's districts, I mean, this is a deep red state. It's just hard for me to ding them too much just because, I mean, 20% of the vote went red. You could see that when you look at the map here, they did make one district more competitive than the other. So, I mean, for this, I would say Montana did a fair job at making a mostly fair map. And so I wouldn't change anything with Montana. And moving over to Idaho. Now, the state of Idaho, when you look at the map, I mean, both districts are not competitive at all, but when you look at the voter turnout in Idaho, I mean, this is a state where Republicans get about 70% of the vote. And so no matter how you dice it up, Republicans are going to win this state. So I'd say it's a pretty fair map. And then, moving down to Utah, Utah, once again, this is a state where you can definitely see they drew Salt Lake City into all four districts. Automatically, that's a fail. And Utah, I mean, it is a deep red state, but it doesn't change the fact that they purposely split up Salt Lake City, and the Democrats don't have a single seat of representation from Utah. So Utah gets an F. I mean, that's a terrible map. Now, moving on to Arizona. Now, the map for Arizona, when I look at this, initially, I don't like the fact that because it's a swing state, I don't like the fact that Republicans have such a huge advantage here. But when I look at the map, I see that there's multiple very competitive seats. I mean, the state in 2022 we did see a number of seats flip red. I mean, and I think that this map, it's mostly fair in terms of the way, it represents the voters here. In 2020, the state had a map that, favored the Democrats. Now the map does favor the GOP. I mean, you look here, this district down here in District 6, I mean, it's pretty competitive. The first district's pretty competitive. And so the way I look at it is, I mean, Arizona did vote for the GOP by 5.5 points. I mean, you look at the margin here. So, I mean, Republicans, I mean, you look at this map, and I would say Arizona is on a thin line of ice here. I mean, you have two safe Democrat seats, three safe Republican seats, and then the rest of the map is relatively competitive with, one district being, lean blue, one being lean red, and then these other two districts really are more competitive. So I'm going to say Arizona actually does score very high on the map. Maybe the lines need to be tweaked a little bit, but Arizona gets a B. Now moving over to Nevada, Nevada gets an F, and I'm going to explain why. The fact that Republicans have 25% of the House seat representation, even though they've straight up won in 2024, I mean, look at this. You have 50% of the vote in Nevada went for the GOP, yet Republicans only have one district, and it's pretty clear to me what they did. They split up Vegas to be as unfavorable to the GOP as possible. So this map gets an F. That is a bad map. Now, moving over to the state of Washington. The state of Washington, overall, its map isn't horrible. It's not as bad as some of the other maps on here. I would like to see some of these districts be a little more competitive. I think this one's fine the way it's drawn. This one maybe could be a tad bit more competitive. My main gripe, though, is this second congressional district. When you look at a heat map of Washington, you can see this is a pretty conservative area for the most part, and they did kind of draw along the coast here to make this down towards Seattle to make it a impossible district for the GOP to win. And I'm not a big fan of that type of, map drawing. So this year, in my opinion, is a negative against the Democrats in terms of their the fairness of this map. And the fact that Republicans have 20% of the House seats, roughly, they do have 20% of the House seats, versus the fact that, the GOP did get close to 40% of the vote in the state. I mean, gosh, they're getting cheated in terms of the numbers, but at the same time, my main issue with Washington is I would be okay with it if this district was maybe a bit more competitive, but if they had one more competitive district, I would say this would be a much more fair map. And in terms of that, I would say Washington's definitely better than some of the other states out there, but it could definitely be better. So I'm going to give Washington a C, but it definitely could be better. Now, moving down to the state of Oregon. Oregon's map, it isn't necessarily fair. I mean, Republicans are getting less than 20% of the House seats, but at the same time, this district here is relatively competitive. These two aren't so competitive. And so with Oregon's map, it's hard for me to say that this is a super gerrymandered map. I would say it's better than Washington's, but it's not a lot better than Washington's. This is a decent map for Republicans. I would say that perhaps this district should be a little more competitive, but it has been Republican in the past. So I'm going to go ahead and give Oregon I mean, to me, it's definitely better than some of the states in New England. And with everything else taken into consideration, I would say Oregon's map definitely deserves a B. If I had a B minus grade, that's probably where I'd place Oregon. Now, moving on to the state of California. Now, this is the map California currently has, and this map is drawn by an independent commission. Now, right away, the first thing I notice is the fact that Republicans have 9 out of 52 House seats, even though they won almost 40% of the vote in the state. Now, to visualize what that looks like, Republicans currently have 17% of the delegation of 52 that goes to D.C. In terms of the House representation that California gets. That is pretty lopsided right away. And when you look at what Texas sends, for example, Texas sends 34% of its House delegation to D.C. as Democrats. Now, by no means is this, a fair number. When you look at Texas, for example, Texas should be sending a little over 40%. So Democrats are getting cheated about 10% in Texas. But what Republicans are getting cheated in California is far worse. I mean, 17% is a far cry from 40. And when you look at this map, I mean, this is a map, once again, that was drawn by an independent commission. I mean, you look at LA, I mean, some of these districts are not fairly drawn, especially when you consider the fact that over 1 million Republicans live in LA County. 1.18 million Republicans call LA County home. And there is not a single district in LA County that is red for the most part. Maybe a little bit of maybe a little bit of California District 40. But that doesn't even take into the fact that this is not a fair map. I mean, this district here should be a red district, except for they did some funny business with this reach around over here. And so California's map, I mean, this is a horrible map. And just for the sake of talking about this, with the new proposition that California is putting out, this is what they're going to do to Republicans in the state. The Republicans in California, 6 million Republicans will have 4 House districts. 7% of the representation that California will send to D.C. will look like this. Now, to be fair and compare this to Texas, this is what Texas is looking to do to Democrats. So Democrats will have a delegation of 21 instead of, 32. And yes, while this is unfair, and I don't like the fact that the GOP is doing this, this is still more fair, obviously, than this, but what Republicans already currently have in California. So California undoubtedly gets an F. There's no way around it. California gets an F. I mean, their map is so unfair right now that Republicans have 17% of the House delegation, even though they got 40% of the vote in the state. They're about to only get 7% of the House seats, even though they'll still hold 36 to 40% of the vote in the state. This map is unfair, and the map they're going to be dealt is unfair. And by the way, when Texas redraws its map, it would also get an F in terms of its fairness. But with California, for a state with a so-called independent commission, it gets an F. Now, moving over to our last state, the state of Hawaii. This is a blue state. You could argue that maybe one of these districts should be a little bit more, more competitive. But I mean, again, this is similar to West Virginia. I mean, how are you meant to divide a state where Republicans, got 30%, 37% of the vote? I mean, Democrats still did very well in Hawaii. And so, I mean, again, it's a state with 2 electoral votes, or I'm sorry, two House districts. And so, I mean, once again, I would say the lines can be adjusted a little bit, but still, Hawaii, for the most part, gets a passing grade. So that's pretty much everything for this video, guys. Let me know what you guys think of them in the comments below. Here are your 11 failed states. You have New Jersey, Maryland, North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Arkansas, Illinois, New Mexico, Utah, Nevada, and California. So, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments, and we will be talking more about gerrymandering as the 2026 midterms gets ever closer.